Good afternoon, and welcome to the Appointment Subcommittee for the meeting of July 27, 2020. Prior to this evening's meeting, I would like to just set a couple of the game rules. Number one, I have 1 hour to conclude this subcommittee, and I intend to do that. At the previous meeting, we had 9 people from the audience speak, to which I entertain and hope there will be people speaking again. We're going to limit that number to 9 also tonight. But anyone who has spoken at the June meeting will not be allowed to speak tonight. We're looking for 9 new voices. And so I ask that everybody be civil and courteous to each of the speakers who speak, setting aside your differences. And as long as we know that we're all in this together, that this is our city, and we want our city to be the best it could possibly be. Bearing in mind, there are many, many people in our community who have different views, to which we should be fair to each and every one of them. So I ask that the mayor at this particular time speak before the appointment subcommittee. Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, I had to unmute there for a second. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do agree that we all are all in this together. I want to start my remarks tonight with a story. A great mayor, the first Italian-American to ever hold the job in our capital city of Boston. In his book, A Mayor for a New America, he held fast to what his mother taught him and the early lessons that he learned as a child. His family was made up of Italian immigrants, not unlike many of ours. His mother helped others who would arrive from the old country. She helped them assimilate, enroll in education, and of course find jobs. He tells the story of being a child going to parochial school, and the nuns telling him that he was spelling his name wrong. Over and over, they would tell him, until finally his mother came to assure the nuns that he was not spelling his name incorrectly. It was Menino, M-E-N-I-N-O. And I mentioned that story because it struck me when I read it. It reminded me that we are not all that far removed from all of our friends and all of in our community who are new to Revere and to our country. Many of our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, business owners in our city, and certainly the children in our district are Meninos. On one hand, I'm proud that our city continues to be a home to many immigrants, to the folks who are seeking a better life for themselves and for their children, to folks who have chosen to leave everything behind to become an American, to be part and parcel of the multicultural fabric of our city and our country. But what pains me is the idea that Mayor Menino's story is still relevant today. It pains me to think that we haven't made the progress that we thought we would, or worse, that we're actually going in the wrong direction. I have to say I'm incensed, I'm embarrassed, I'm disappointed by some of the things that I've read and heard in my conversations over the past few weeks regarding my appointment of Dimple Rana. And these are quotes now, remember. Is she even legal? Dump the dimp. She's fugly. What's her nationality? She don't look Asian. If you share her values, you're not good for Revere either. I've never seen or heard her do anything for white folks. And let's not forget the mocking of her name, Simple, Dimpy, and of course, Pimple. These are words I'm sharing because they are the vile words being used to describe a city employee, Dimple Rana. Now, I have to ask, how would all of you feel if these words were directed at you? Would you tolerate this kind of language? Now, it's fair to say I can and should be more forceful in denouncing this kind of language myself. And I know that we can all do better. But what's different now is that I'm afraid that these words, the small group of people who post nasty statements like those words, are now influencing the council's decisions and the vital role that you all play in our city. I will not allow one of our city employees to be condemned for having the audacity to advance a conversation of diversity and inclusion for all in our community. These are also words that tell me today, more than ever, we need support for Dimple and support for the Human Rights Commission in the city of Revere. If these are the words our residents are comfortable using publicly to refer to a city employee, just imagine what's being mumbled under their breath in line at market basket. Just imagine how our neighbors, our friends, those who don't share our skin color or our Revere accents, think about how they feel when they read these public comments. I know some of you may say that you support reestablishing the HRC, but you don't support Dimple. Unfortunately, that cannot be the case. You can't let these comments linger and vote against her at the same time. And yes, and say at the same time that human rights matter in our city. You can't allow more hate to be filled in our community through harmful rhetoric that divides people, then say, yes, let's have someone that we can get along with to lead the Human Rights Commission. This isn't about Dimple. This is about having a Human Rights Commission led by somebody with deep knowledge, personal life experience, and understanding of what some of our most difficult challenges are for those in our community. The hate that has been directed towards Dimple is a reflection of the hate that some in this city have for change. And I will not allow it to prevent us from continuing to make progress. I've heard some of you say that you want someone else. I can't help but question that. Is it that you want someone else, or is it that you don't want anyone to challenge the status quo? But let me tell you about Dimple. Dimple Rana, the city employee I've appointed executive director of the Human Rights Commission. Dimple, like me and like many of you, grew up in Revere. She went to Revere Public Schools, now holds a master's degree in public policy from Tufts University. For the past 8 years, she's been an employee of the city, starting as a neighborhood liaison, making sure each neighborhood and constituent had a voice at City Hall. She was ultimately promoted to Director of Outreach and Engagement because of her success. She's helped our city rebuild 9 of our playgrounds and parks. She's grown the farmers market. She served on the Suffolk Downs Development Advisory Group, and in 2016, Speaker of the House Bob DeLeo appointed her to the Asian American Commission for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And just this year, when COVID-19 hit, Dimple stepped up and activated a network of community partners that helped our most vulnerable populations and ultimately saved lives. We would have had numbers more like our neighbors in Chelsea if it wasn't for Dimple and the team that she worked with 24/7 to stem the spread of the virus. Plain and simple, Ms. Dimple Rana is the most qualified person to take on the responsibilities of the executive director of our Human Rights Commission. She's proven herself time and time again to rise to every challenge and occasion and advance all people in our city. And that's why, in an effort to be financially prudent, I made the decision in this year's budget to fold those duties and responsibilities of the executive director into Dimple's position as the director of outreach and engagement. We must face our most difficult issues through the lens of those with different ideas and unshared perspectives. It's time that we understand that systemic changes to our policies and to our culture are what bring us here today discussing the Human Rights Commission in Revere. Major companies across the country are creating positions to investigate and make better their own business practices. Diversity, equity, and inclusion officers are the key to success of any large corporation. And as the CEO of the city of Revere, I know that we must do the same. It's no longer okay to talk the talk. We must take actions, and without a sound set of policies driven by those that know the work, I'm telling you right now that we will no longer be a competitive city to do business in. New residents and new businesses are attracted to our city because of our diversity, not in spite of it. Human service agencies, Mass General, Cambridge Health Alliance, and others know the huge value of inclusion and the huge value of Dimple's work and the success of their programs to serve a diverse population. If we tell them that we don't agree with them, you'll see how quickly they'll go to work with other communities that respect and advance their values and their work. Our faith leaders, every weekend they welcome and reach hundreds of people in our community, and they support Dimple. They know the work that she's done, and they know the issues that she will help peacefully resolve. But if we send a signal that we don't agree with them, good luck having their support. In 10 or 15 years, many people are going to look back at this very conversation. History will have its eyes on all of you. This is an inflection point for our city. Let's make our objective to continue to make progress and create a welcoming environment for all. In some ways, this reminds me of the contentious debate over gay marriage in 2004. And back then, if our state rep at the time, Kathy Reinstein, took a poll of her constituents and listened to the loudest, most negative voices, she would have not supported gay marriage.
Mr. Mayor?
Thankfully, Representative Reinstein had the foresight and the guts to ignore the noise.
Mr.
And look
Mayor?
at where we are 16 years later. The earth hasn't fallen off its axis. We've become a more welcoming and inclusive society. I also have to say that this confirmation process is unlike anything that I've seen in the last 9 years. The last 9 years I've served as a city councilor and as a mayor. Never once in that time has anyone been such a lightning rod.
Mr.
Never
Mayor?
once have the voices of community members been stifled. Never once have we had council members not trust the mayor's judgment for an appointment. So why now? What is it about Dimple that has so many people upset? The work to end racism and discrimination in our city, a city where we know it exists, a city where it's felt deeply by many of our residents. This work is going to be extremely difficult. It is going to be uncomfortable. It will be more uncomfortable than this confirmation process. But I believe in our city. I believe in all of us as leaders of our city. I believe that if we work together to realize that change must happen and that we must engage in the dialogue to make that change, we will make progress and we will help improve our residents' lives. Confirming Dimple is a fundamental first step in preparing for some of the work that lies ahead.
Okay.
And that's why we need to work together as leaders, as residents, and as the city of Revere to do the work. We cannot be satisfied with the status quo. That is unacceptable. And I'll close by saying this, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the leeway that we owe it to all of our residents and to all of our children to move this city forward. And regardless of the outcome of tonight, we will continue that work. Dimple has committed herself to this work and to our city, her city, and I'm dedicated to helping her do it. Thank you again for the leeway, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to the conversation with the chair, with the rest of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, Mr. Mayor, you took up several minutes of some of the people that I was going to allow to speak from the audience. I made a pledge prior to this meeting that we're going to conduct this meeting in an hour, and we're going to do that. And the council of the whole is going to start at 6 o'clock. So the first council, let me first of all introduce members of the appointment subcommittee who comprise the voting of this evening's recommendations to the committee of the whole. Councilor Giannino, Councilor McKenna, Councilor Powers, Councilor Visconti, and by virtue ex officio, Councilor Keefe, and myself as chair. The first person who's going to speak from the subcommittee is Councilor McKenna. Councilor McKenna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have always believed that there are three sides of the story. Yours, mine, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. I have known you for a long time, Dimple. You were my student. I had all your siblings as students, your brother and your two sisters. I have met your hard-working parents on several occasions. I feel over the years we've had a good relationship with one another. I know you are very educated and have gone through some of the finest colleges. I also know the good things that you have done for so many people in need, especially during the coronavirus. One thing that was disturbing to me was that there was a rumor circulating around the city that you were in a video calling white people crackers. So I did my homework and I watched the video twice to see if that was true. And that was never said at all by you. However, I would be remiss to have sat on this council for 5 years and not advocated for my colleagues that have supported me over these years. I also found it disturbing on the video. You called out 2 of the sitting councilors while you were an employee of the city, one by name as a shady racist, and the other you said that he said all immigrants were cockroaches. When in fact he said, and it's on a Revere TV video, if we make Revere a sanctuary city, we are going to open it up to all gang members and criminal immigrants that will come into the city like cockroaches. Not the best verbiage, I admit, but after that video went viral, the way you twisted his remarks, this councilor was deemed as racist because of what you said. In addition, it was clear to me that that was not his intent in saying what he said. Now both of these councilors are labeled as racist, and this will follow them for the rest of their lives. My question to you, Dimple, is, do you have any regrets for the comments that you made in this video? Is she here to answer?
You're just going to make your statement, and then
Okay.
we're not going to have a question and answer
Okay.
period.
Moving on, I would like to ask you, during a farmers market festival last year, 2 Revere residents were reprimanded by you for wearing political shirts while they were working on a food truck. The 2 Revere residents' license were restricted to only sell their product from 1 day a week instead of 7 days a week. At one point at the market, a picture surfaced on Facebook where people were holding a political sign that said, "Vote for Dimple for City Councilor at Large." The comment under the photo was, "Thanks for your sign, Dimple." I am asking you, if you were the Human Rights Director, do you believe that people deserve second chances? If you do, would you consider revisiting this punishment and reinstating these 2 Revere residents' license to sell their product on a daily basis? And lastly, I would like to ask you about a comment you posted on Facebook that you said, "I just want to add that the worst years in Revere for me were when I was at the Wayland School in the 80s, from the 3rd grade to the 6th grade. The racist teachers, administrators, and students made mine and my sister's lives a living hell." I would like a comment from you for this explanation. Last question, Dimple, and this is the last question. As the Director of Human Rights, can you be fair across the board to every resident in Revere, no matter what their race, creed, or color are? I believe that everybody deserves a second chance. We are all human and we all make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes and we grow to be better people. I do believe the city of Revere should have an HR director, but sometimes a job might not be the right fit for the candidate seeking the position. I know this as a fact because I had applied for a few administrative positions in the school system and didn't get them. And I had great relationships with the people that interviewed me. So tonight I would like to ask the council if there is a favorable vote. Perhaps we could look at the appointment as one with stipulation. The appointment would be on an interim basis, and there would be a review after 1 year to see if Dimple was a good fit for the Director of Human Rights. This was done with the past Chief of Police, and he proved his worth and went into a permanent position. In ending, I would like to say to the residents of Revere, Revere is a better place than what's been going on for the last 4 weeks. My wish is there is no more division in our city, that we come together as one, respect one another, and stand united as a community especially during this uncharted times. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Council President Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know that I believe Ms. Reyna is on, and I hope that she'll be able to answer some of the questions. I certainly think that she should have an opportunity to speak tonight. I did want to bring up a few comments, and everyone that watches me and has seen me and how I've acted over the last 5 years realizes I really get upset when we have negative news, especially in the Globe or the Herald, depicting our city as something it is not. It frustrates me. I've seen councilors be part of it, and I've called them out. I've seen other residents of the city put out false information, and I've called them out. And this is nothing different. The question in the Globe read, does Revere need a Human Rights Commission? And the answer is the council doesn't think so. The answer from the council is a resounding yes. We have voted for this over and over again to reestablish the Human Rights Commission. So that right there got me pretty upset. So I want to get the facts straight on the Human Rights Commission and where the big stall is actually from. The City Council has voted 3 times since 2014 in favor of reestablishing the commission. That's 3 times. The commission has been left dormant since 1999. That's 21 years and through 3 administrations. Now, after almost 5 years in office, 2 affirmative council votes, our mayor wants to appoint an executive director. Not a commission, which we've asked for, just the executive director. It's taken 5 years to find 1 candidate. Not one other person was interviewed, never considered one appointment. That's not an appointment to me, that's an ultimatum. Much like he just said, if we don't vote yes, we're voting against the commission, which is completely false. That to me is a giant process failure. So I ask again, who is stalling the process? Why is the hostility always towards the council when 3 administrations failed to take action and show that this commission is actually important? How many times have those so enraged today written to him or any other of the administrations that before this became a hot topic in May? How many times did they contact the Boston Globe and ask why, quite frankly, why isn't your boss moving forward on this council matter that has been voted on affirmatively 3 times since 2014, and it's been failed since 1999? I know myself, Councilor Morabito, and others have reminded Mayor Arrigo often that this matter means something to us. It's in his office, it's on his dry erase board, and it says HRC. It's been there for 2+ years. Now, I don't blame him. He's a busy man and he's doing a really nice job. But he has many priorities. Clearly, he has felt that this is not high on the priority list. Clearly, you all felt that this was okay to stay dormant for 20+ years. Maybe the city isn't so bad. Now again, I agree that this commission needs to get going. We need to get it right, and the lack of options is concerning to say the least. It makes me really question. So now you say to the Globe, the City Council is not in favor of establishing the commission. This is not truthful, when the fact is we have initiated this process, again, over and over again. Would you criticize your boss on this matter? This is another example of unfairly characterizing the body. Sound judgment, fairness, honesty, and representing the facts is an integral piece of the commission in order to really fight for what's most needed. The ability to work through the weeds and manage the gray area is a vital role in leadership. Yes, we should absolutely be okay with uncomfortable conversations. This is the only way we can really work on structural change. But divide and uncomfort are far different. This process has been divisive. We should not be creating and endorsing false narratives and crying wolf, as it will dilute the times when we truly need to help those who need us most. And again, the words that Mayor Arrigo mentioned, spoken about Ms. Reyna, are completely bad. We condemn them. I condemn them. It's just disgusting. Anyone that talks like that on social media or in person or to me, I condemn you. You should not be talking about anyone like that. Ms. Reyna is a good person. I've worked closely with her at times. She does a really nice job on a lot of different projects. I have some disagreements on this appointment. and that's why I feel that this has been a major disconnect. It's not personal. The entire process has taken us into a dark place that it does not belong. Starting out on the wrong foot is an understatement. Between the initial concerns on what you would get in return via compensation and what your current workload is, it makes me really question what's happening behind the scenes. The fact that this was tabled to be further discussed and then immediately we took to name-calling, misrepresenting information, and then ultimately creating a large divide in our community is not the path we could have taken. This was, again, another epic process failure and showed me lack of judgment. The council just wants to get it right. That's our job. We're here to speak for the entire community, who clearly have concerns. Secondly, and most importantly, instead of this process being about an actual commission, you took advantage and made it about you, which it is not. No one person, and in fairness, a lot of people made it just about you. No one person is greater than the commission, and no one person should be the focal point. I again feel this has gone in that wrong direction. To contradict the current narrative that the City Council will be standing in front of an inception of the commission, I challenge the mayor to look inside his capable city with many resources, his cabinet, his city staff, school administration, and city council to assist in getting this commission off the ground. Let's get the actual commission appointed, which I've asked for a number of times to get the actual commissioners appointed, and we still don't have that in front of us, and work on beginning the process in a more inclusive way rather than this divide we have in front of us right now. Revere has always found ways to come together for the better good, and this opinion can reunite us rather than divide us and push us further apart. This is my opinion. Councilor Serino later may be presenting an alternative motion, but I implore the mayor to work on getting the entire commission established like I've asked unofficially, and I'm asking tonight officially. We don't need to just start with an executive director. Look at the ordinances. It doesn't state that that has to happen first. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr.
Council
Chairman.
President Keefe. Councilor Visconti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to first begin by thanking the subcommittee for agreeing to table this appointment at our last meeting. I will say it's a bit disheartening when the City Council asks for time to do their due diligence regarding an appointment for an executive director to a newly reactivated Human Rights Commission, and it's misconstrued to the media that the Revere City Council may not want a Human Rights Commission. The fact of the matter is that I believe the City Council as a whole truly believes that at this time a Human Rights Commission is needed so that we as a community can address the inequities that may occur in our city due to race, color, religion, or creed. I would also like to thank the residents of Revere for all the many emails, the many conversations over the past few weeks, both for and against this appointment. Our city has made great strides by following best practices in leveraging data to improve city services, best practices for community policing, as well as best practices for our school system. This is a critical appointment. And like I said in our last meeting, we need to make sure we get this right. The commission will set the course for our community in terms of how we can address racial injustice and other related issues now and into the future. Best practices would dictate that a position this critical and so important to the fabric of our community be one that is an open and transparent process so that we can ensure that that person selected has the proper credentials to move this commission forward. That said, looking at comparable communities around the Commonwealth, there is evidence that professionals with legal background typically oversee these communities. Currently, I believe that there are 21 communities that have some sort of human rights commission. Out of those 21 communities, 7 of those communities have an executive director. And out of those 7 executive directors, 6 of them are attorneys. And while Ms. Rana is a visible member of our community who has shown her commitment to our city, that is no doubt, I strongly believe that an attorney who understands civil rights law would be better suited to lead this commission. In the end, we need to make sure that this commission is structured appropriately, led by a qualified professional with legal experience, and ultimately supported by a diverse group of residents who are committed to being impartial to every resident so our community can move forward together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I believe it's important to address a few things to ensure this is not taken out of context. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to remind you that listening to your constituents, the people who elected you to office, is the most important job an elected official has. Had you taken the time to listen to your community, the council would not be in this position. The City of Revere has a Human Rights Commission that was established many years ago, and this very council unanimously supported the Human Rights Commission again recently. You can go to the city webpage right now and apply for one of the 11 positions that are open. Tonight, the issue is not whether or not the city needs a Human Rights Commission. We know we need it. We are very aware of that. The issue is this person qualified and an appropriate candidate for the position? The City of Revere is aware of the inequities in public health, education, and housing that affects its residents of color, immigrants, and low-income families. The City of Revere is committed to, and I'm committed to, taking meaningful actions to address systemic racism in our community. It has always been my goal to be a voice of the people. It's not my job to tell my constituents what to think, but rather ask them what they think. Since this topic generated so much interest, calls, emails, and social media, I did create a survey which received over 350 responses. This helped me gauge a better sense of the issue. The city is overwhelmingly in support of the HRC, and the majority is also in favor of having an executive director. But much like the calls and emails I received, the city is divided over if Ms. Rana is in fact the right person for the position. According to our ordinance, Chapter 9.28, an executive director should be appointed by the mayor, subject to the council's confirmation. That's why we're here this evening. There is no doubt in my mind that Dimple Rana is an asset to this community. She has proven herself and has done a great deal during the COVID-19 pandemic. Her hard work with our youth and work regarding healthy community initiatives is recognized and so greatly appreciated. She's a valued employee of this city. The concern tonight is whether or not she is an appropriate fit for the executive director position of the HRC. Although I believe that she absolutely has a spot on this board and belongs there, I do not believe that she has the qualifications to serve as an executive director. I also feel that it's the city's responsibility to outline the qualifications for this position much more clearly and also post the job openly, as the city would do for any other job opening, and that is something that we as a city failed to do. Many members of the community have reached out in support of Ms. Rana, but have also reached out with concerns, and they're afraid to speak out because they don't want to be labeled or treated differently for their opinion. My decision is nothing personal and absolutely no reflection on Ms. Rana's dedication and hard work that she has done for our community. Her expertise in her field speak for themselves, and we all know of the great work that she's done and is qualified of doing. However, I believe that for this position, a candidate should have a background in law and a deep understanding of human rights and systemic racism, not only through experience, but through education, facts, expertise, and research. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Being the chair of this subcommittee, we have spoken, you've heard from all the members of the subcommittee. I will be the last speaker. I will allow the council now who wants to speak before I do, because when we go to the committee of the whole, we're going to ask for a vote, yes or no. There'll be no more conversation after this appointment subcommittee is concluded. Councilor Serino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by saying that I 100% unequivocally believe we need to reactivate the Human Rights Commission in our community, and that the time is now for us to reinstate it. I also fully recognize that we need to acknowledge the hate and racism that is in our community and do our best to eradicate it, because on the hate on the basis of skin color, religion, sexual orientation, or political beliefs has no place in Revere. Our beloved city is torn right now. Like it or not, this nomination has divided our city, and I think we would be hard-pressed to find a member of this council who does not realize the magnitude of our vote on this tonight. Revere is a diverse city, and we embrace that quality. From poor Italian immigrants like my family who came to Revere in the early 20th century, to the wave of Cambodian immigrants who came in the late 20th century, to the Moroccan and Latino immigrants who have come here just recently in the 21st century, and everyone in between, this city is home to all of us. Overall, as a councilor and as a lifelong resident, I would not characterize our city as it has been characterized as, quote, racist. However, I do not deny that acts of racism and discrimination, even minor ones, toward our residents occur in our community regularly. As a white Italian kid, I probably would not see this, but over the past couple of months, I have talked to many residents who have experienced racism and discrimination, and it has made me sad and angry to hear some of these stories. For these reasons, I believe we must act to reactivate the Human Rights Commission in order, as the ordinance states, to promote understanding among individuals and groups in the city through improving the quality of discourse and eliminating unlawful discrimination. And it was this council, which I wasn't on at the time, but as Mr. President said, the council has taken action. It's not our fault that the mayor has not. All this being said, I do have concerns with the nominee before us tonight. Over the past month, I have heard from a lot of residents both in support and against this nomination. To all Revere residents, I do take my vote for or against Ms. Rana's nomination very seriously. The Human Rights Commission ought to get off the ground and do so in a manner that begins an important dialogue in our community. The commission should be a tool to bring people of all walks of life together, and should be headed by a person who can unite our city while leading us through these uncomfortable topics and conversations. Dimple, you have a tremendous resume. You have dedicated your personal and professional life to promoting social justice and equality, and I'm not disputing that. I respect that, I respect you, and I think you have done a great job to advance your causes that you're passionate about. However, a resume and experience are only part of what ought to be taken into consideration when appointing someone to a position. How a person conducts themselves can also speak to a person's ethos. Professionalism must also be considered. On the Sunday prior to the last council meeting, I reached out to you in your role as a nominee because I wanted to get your thoughts and perspective on how we as a city could utilize the HRC and could respond to instances like the event in order that we bring our city together instead of further dividing it. I was deeply disappointed that it took 21 days for you to return that phone call. Regardless of this explanation, barring a medical emergency, there is no reasonable excuse for why it took 3 weeks to return a phone call. And I'm not the only city councilor who had reached out who you did not return phone calls to. Especially when in those 3 weeks, we did hear from you through social media and in articles in the paper. And one takeaway that I got from reading one of those articles, the one in the Journal, was that you have been doing a lot of good work in the city, but that your professional plate is now full. As we reinstate the Human Rights Commission, as President Keefe said, we need to get this right. We owe it to the city to get this right. I believe the executive director ought to be a person who can dedicate the proper time and resources to the commission without letting issues before it slip through the cracks or neglecting other duties. I applaud Mayor Arrigo for finally taking steps to reactivate the commission. I believe the executive director should be a person of color, and even better if she's a woman and perhaps, as Councilor Visconti said, an attorney. However, Ms. Rana, I am sorry to say I cannot support your nomination tonight for a couple of reasons. First, you made it clear in the press that you already are doing a lot in the community, and for that I commend and thank you. but I fear that adding this commitment to your workload will cause one of the balls you're juggling to fall, and we can't afford to let the Human Rights Commission be the one that falls through the cracks. And second, as a city councilor, I find it unprofessional that you, as a nominee and even as a department head, did not return my call to discuss a matter that I felt would have involved this commission once reestablished. You're the only department head city employee who I have called who it took 3 weeks to return that phone call. If it is the will of the majority of this committee and the council to confirm Ms. Rana's nomination tonight, then I will respect that, and I vow to work collaboratively with Dimple to make sure the Human Rights Commission is reactivated and is a voice for all Revere residents. However, if the council does not so vote tonight, I would encourage Mayor Arrigo to put forth another nominee for this position at the earliest possible opportunity so that we can get on with the important work of reestablishing this commission. And I thank you. I apologize. Thank you for the leeway. I appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Sereno. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the latitude since I'm not on the committee. However, my name did come up a little bit, and I think I'm certainly a part of this. Let me just say quickly to the mayor that I've never used any of those terms you mentioned, those derogatory terms, and I find them offensive also. But I think that's far from the point of what we're doing here tonight. First of all, I don't see color. I judge everybody on the content of their character. A famous person of color said that once. I live that way. I judge people on their track record. I've spent 20 years on the Caput Board of Directors. I never once asked when a family was about to be homeless because they needed extra money because their rent was increased. I never said, is that a Muslim family? Is that a black family? Is that an Asian family? No, they were human beings in need of help, and I've helped hundreds of people. And so whenever I'm accused of being a racist, I have a track record. You understand? So I know I have to make this personal. I didn't want to make this personal, but I'm not voting for you, Ms. Rana, and I'll tell you why. And I have to make it personal because I have to show why you don't have the qualifications for this position. You went and lied about me in public, and you did that for political gain. Now, my religion made me forgive you. I've already forgiven you for that. But the problem is, I can't trust that you won't do that to someone else. You cannot be impartial. I have a platform. I'm a city councilor. I can defend myself, and my record defends me. But what about the poor stiff that comes before you that doesn't have that platform? I can't take that chance. Now, unfortunately, the mayor has made this about him and Dimple, and it really is not. It's about getting the correct person for this position. It absolutely has to be impartial. I gave you an opportunity after you did what you did to me to not recant it, but to give me the benefit of the doubt and see where I was coming from. And you were not capable of doing that. So there is no way that I can support you for this position because I don't believe you can be impartial. And that's what this position requires. So that's where I stand on this. And I'm sure that I'll be called a racist and everything. I know you're a person of color, and you use that a lot. And you used it in a speech after the Black Lives Matter on the steps of City Hall. And you said you're a person of color and you ran for office twice and you didn't win. And I don't believe it has anything to do with the fact that you're a person of color that you didn't win. Perhaps you weren't offering what the people were looking for. So in this instance, I'm sorry if anybody's offended by what I said, but the reason I can't support you is because of the content of your character and your track record. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me start off by saying I listened to each and every one of my colleagues carefully this evening. And last meeting, my passion got the best of me. I might have said some things that got a little hostile, and I didn't mean. But one thing I can tell you is, when it comes to passion, I'm very passionate about the Human Rights Commission. And when I heard my colleagues talk about the Human Rights Commission and tabling the appointment at hand, rather than having less conversation, there was less conversation about the appointment at hand than the Human Rights Commission. So the Human Rights Commission was already voted on twice. I put it forth before the council. So my colleagues do want a Human Rights Commission. As far as the appointment, the reason I got so passionate and frustrated is I felt this was prolonging the initiation of the Human Rights Commission. To speak specifically and directly to Mrs. Rana, the appointee, the person who is up for appointment, I think she is qualified. I've never had a bad rapport with her. And I feel if any of my colleagues think she is that terrible and unprofessional, why are we not filing a motion with the mayor to have her fired the past years? Why? Is she that bad of a person that she's going to take on more responsibility for a volunteer position? It must mean something to her. She's being appointed to executive director. She's going to do the legwork, and she's doing it at no cost. It's a volunteer position according to bylaws. And I respect my colleagues. Some of them say, they prefer maybe someone with a legal background. Can I just tell you, each and every one of us, we're elected by the people. We create ordinances, we make ordinances, we research ordinances, but I don't think any one of us on this council is a lawyer. So does that mean we're not qualified? No. Each and every one of us, I feel, are qualified because we listen to our constituents. Sometimes we have empathy, and we put constituents' feelings before our own because it's the right thing. But at the end of the day, I think the most important freedom we have is the vote. That's the most important human rights, is to vote. And each and every one of us has that right tonight on the council to vote for this appointment or not. And I am not a member, but if it's voted, when it comes to the city council as a whole, I will be voting favorably. And I hope my colleagues on the council will reconsider and vote for Dimple Rana. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso, Chairman Guanasso. Very simply put, there is no question that the mayor has a right to his appointment. There is clearly no deference in the fact that Ms. Rana is highly qualified. She has done great work during her time dealing with COVID-19. But that's not the issue. The issue is her character, and I can personally attest to that. I've been attacked by her campaign, by her surrogates, and then some. To the point that she went after my daughter due to a beef between another person, not even related to her, that was working on her campaign. That said, my dear friend Joe Maglione was besmirched by her, saying that he took bribes when he did not. And I know that personally. I was involved in the issue. Nothing happened. no apology, no nothing. That's character. That's a character flaw. When she was up here as an activist and protesting, there was no social distancing, no mask, only chalk. I'm a nurse, and my colleagues have dealt with COVID-19 to the point that some of them come home every day and cry. Over 2,500 pediatric doctors are fighting to protect children that are now affected. There were children at that rally. That's irresponsible. That's a lack of character. Your qualifications have nothing to do with your character. Now, as was said earlier, this is a legislative body, but the Human Rights Commission is not a legislative body. And they have to have knowledge of the law, because part of what they're going to do is weigh in on issues in which law is affected and in which people may be prosecuted for what might be presented. Ask me how I know. Because I asked. That was one of the questions that were asked when we tabled this issue, to get more information. No one here that I know of does not want a Human Rights Commission. I certainly do. But the issue is the temperament and character of the executive director that the mayor chose. There is a clear track record of that involving Nico Kostopoulos when you were president, Chairman Granasso. So there is a clear animus with her. Not to mention the things that she said online, not to mention a whole slew of other issues that I can go into, but really don't have the time to. So for me, when given the opportunity to cast my vote, it'll be no. Not for personal reasons, although that is a part of it, make no mistake about it. You going after my daughter lowers you in my eyes as a person. In your character, I won't even address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. All the councilors having the opportunity to speak. As chair, I chose to
Mr.
speak.
Chairman, can I
Should-
state a point of
Where
information quickly?
there is actually no points involved now. Everyone had their time to speak, and I'm
I
ready
just wanted to
speak.
make a correction. If you give me leeway, you do. If you don't, I
Please,
understand.
Councilor Maravito, start the process all over again. Yes.
Thank you. So the executive director does not prosecute. I just want to make that clear. According to the ordinance, they answer to the council and the mayor. They are not their own power of authority where they can prosecute and try cases. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Now it's the opportunity that I have reserved for last, based on the fact that people have asked me, why would I be in opposition of Nipah Rana? I will cite 3 occasions as to why I've founded my beliefs in what I think would be an inappropriate place for her to be in. There was a podcast conducted a couple of years ago to which I took the pains to review. And at that particular podcast, she was with a friend who was throwing the F-bombs around and talking very negatively towards the Revere City Council. And to which, during the conversation, it was brought up that the city councilors in Revere are racist. And I don't believe she mentioned any particular name. She just painted the brush right across all of us. And she had every opportunity at that particular time to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not true. You can't say that about all those councilors. I mean, spell out who you mean or reference who you're talking about. But don't paint that brush. But she did, and she allowed it. So I let that go. Everybody's entitled to a situation once in a while. Then we have the march in the city of Revere by the youth, who proceeded to come from the beach to go to City Hall, of which I didn't do the march. I was at City Hall. I bent down for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, all 80 years of me, in a cold cement slab, as some of the demands were read. And one of the demands was, as the speaker spoke, turned around to the City Hall building and said, and we have to remove all the white officials, who are new elected officials, from that building. And I, sitting next to a young gentleman who happened to be black, I said to him, "You mean me?" And he didn't answer. And only a foot away from me was another counselor, so he heard the whole thing. Nimparana, on that occasion, was in the rear of this. She was part of this process, passing out water. During the debate and through the demands coming forward, she had every opportunity to come forward and say, you know, that's not right. Some of those individuals in there are good people. They are common people, just like you and I, trying to serve a good will. Don't fault them all for what's going on in our world today. She never did that. Then the Friday night comes. They have another protest. And that was the embarrassment, I would think, to that whole group who were out there when they made these demands. And again, they asked for the removal. One of the demands was asked that all the white individuals in that building be removed. Nimparana's in the back, passing out water. They said all their demands and heard them all, and one of them was to get rid of all the white folks in City Hall, and they have a right to do that. And they passed out this chalk. And the individual at the mic, who was beaming to say all these things, said, "You get that chalk, and you write anywhere you want and whatever you want to say." Well, we know what took place. They wrote on the walls of City Hall, a building that you and I, the taxpayer, own. They have no right in the world to write on that building. They can write on the sidewalk. I don't find an objection to that. I do find objections to anyone writing vulgarity on those sidewalks. We have children that traverse these streets. Give them a chance to grow up without the vulgarity. If you're trying to do something good for our community, do it. But don't cause harm in the process of doing what you think is right. Because what you think is right might be wrong in other people's mind. You know, and I worked for 41 years at Mass General Hospital. And I worked with black, brown, white, yellow. I had a black friend who my kids thought he was their uncle. He'd go in there and he'd raise them up in the highest level and he'd show them all the buildings. And they looked forward to seeing Lucen folks. He was a great friend of mine. No, don't call Arthur Guanasso a racist. Don't call my colleagues a racist unless you have foundation to do so. But to paint a brush against us all is a derelict of character. It's your character that we're judging tonight. And your character is proven, as the testimony has been said this evening, not work in your favor. Yes, you've done great things for the community. Yes, you did. And it's a great thing that you're doing that. But you be placed in a very highly sensitive position. Executive Director of Human Rights. That means all of us, white, blue, green, yellow, whatever it is. That means all of us, not just minorities, but all of us. And so you've got to watch and care for all of us. And we want a person who's responsible who'll go out and do that. And I find no objection with the mayor offering up your name. If he felt that's the best person for the position, he has every right to do that. But we are the confirmation body. An exception was made that, we never had this process, not to this extent, no. But we never had a position as sensitive as this. We do have sensitive positions in the city, but this is highly sensitive because it goes a little bit deeper than saying yes or no on a plot level, or yes or no on a liquor license, and yes or no on a driveway improvement. This is a little different. We're talking human, and human means all of us. I thank my colleagues for the leadway, and I made a pledge prior to the meeting starting, that we will conclude at 6 o'clock. Obviously, we can't do that. I asked the council president for a leadway of 15 more minutes. He graciously accepted. So I will ask, by virtue of Zoom, for Dimple Rana to be the first speaker. Please keep it as brief as possible. I know, you're involved with this, but we want to conclude this by 6:15. Thank you. Dimple?
Thank you, Counselor. I am going to keep it brief and actually give the opportunity for at least some of the people who are waiting to speak to be able to speak in support. I believe there's 53 attendees right now, and I know that we're not going to have time to get to all of them in the next 15 minutes, but if I can give up my time to have allow one of the other speakers to share why they support my appointment, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, we certainly intend to do that, Ms. Rana. And what I'm doing is
Point of order.
exactly what we did last meeting. We're going to keep it to 9 speakers, and brevity is in the order. If someone decides that they're going to go...
Point of order.
If someone decides that we're going to go lengthy...
Point of order.
Excuse me, can I finish?
Point of order.
State your point.
An appointee is supposed to speak on their behalf if they're being appointed, correct?
She spoke. She spoke at the
Okay.
previous meeting. No, that's already been covered. So this is a carry forward of the previous meeting. And I've asked my councilors to please, for indulgence sakes.
It does not
Let's
allow
not-
her to answer to the critique that we gave her
So
either.
what we're going to do is have these speakers, we're going to have 15 minutes to do it, and we're going to go by the list that I have before me, and people who have spoken in the past will not be allowed to speak. First being Gina Garro.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No, we cannot. Can you state your name and address, please? Excuse
It's
me.
Gina.
Take
yeah,
it easy, George.
Sorry.
Relax.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit louder.
Okay, how about now?
That's good.
Okay, sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Gina Garro, and I live at 165 Hudson Street in Somerville, Mass. And as someone who grew up in this city and went to the public schools here, I have taught here for 22 years as a teacher at the Garfield Elementary School and am currently the president of the Revere Teachers Association. I support the reestablishment of the Human Rights Commission in Revere. Revere is a far more diverse place than when I grew up here in the 70s and 80s, but we are definitely still struggling to make it a welcoming place for everyone. As a white person, it was really hard to hear the stories that people of color told at the 2 recent rallies in Revere, retelling their experiences of living here. And I understand that acknowledging racism and bigotry makes us feel uncomfortable and defensive, but we do need to accept this challenge so that Revere can be the inclusive and tolerant community that it can and it needs to be. The purpose of the Human Rights Commission is to identify the problems of discrimination in the city and make recommendations to eliminate prejudice, intolerance, bigotry, and discrimination. And this is something that we need now more than ever here. And moreover, I enthusiastically support the appointment of Dimple Rana as the executive director of the Human Rights Commission. She is without a doubt a qualified candidate who has demonstrated her commitment to Revere, particularly the immigrant community in Revere. She has been an integral part of some of the best initiatives like updating the playgrounds and establishing community gardens and the farmers market. And in her most recent role, she is responsible for chairing the COVID-19 response meetings and coordinating with city departments and community groups throughout the city to meet the many needs of so many people during the crisis. Her resume is extensive and rooted in identifying discrimination while also advocating for the disenfranchised people in our community. That is the role of a Human Rights Commission. And therefore, I really strongly urge the council to do what is best for Revere and support her appointment tonight. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ralph DeCicco.
Hi, I'm actually going to speak in two parts. First, I'm going to speak Ralph DeChico, 49 Washington Street, as a resident. First, I must just, not to be negative, as a white male watching last month's meeting, I was very, very offended, and I just could not sit there and believe what I was seeing. I wanted to start off on that. I've never seen anything like that. It was like you could hear crickets when Dimple's name was being brought up to be appointed. I've never seen that in all these years that I've watched council meetings. I understand that you just wanted to table it, but if you wanted, most of the council's questions were about everything that could have been brought up at last month's meeting for her, and now we lost time for residents to voice their opinions for tonight. So I wanted to leave it at that and let you know that I strongly endorse Dimple Rana as the Human Rights Executive Director.
Family don't.
Let me please speak. Once I would like, what I would like to say at that is ordinance driven, in any decisions that are going to be made for on that commission. There are other members that are going to be on it. There's going to be the police chief. There's going to be the fire chief. There's going to be the superintendent. The executive director is going to help establish the commission and bring everybody together to establish the agendas and to make sure that the meetings are done. That is how I'm going to speak as a resident. Now I'm going to put on my other hat. As the Commission on Disabilities, I know firsthand what it takes to reestablish a commission. It's not something that happens overnight. You're looking at a 6 to 10 month before this commission can be reestablished. And this one is going to be a lot longer because the ordinances all have to be reestablished and go through with a fine-tooth comb. So from me sitting here listening to everything tonight, all of the opinions from the councilors, it's your opinions, it's great. But I only heard everybody's opinion that did not want Dimple Rana or for personal reasons. As a city councilor, you have to put your personal opinions aside. That is not what your role is as a city councilor. You do not make your decisions as a personal note. You make your decisions on the recommendations from the mayor and from the constituents. And she would be benefiting. She's absolutely been doing the job right now as that. And she, as a white male and as a white Caucasian male, that's the demographics that everybody's afraid of.
Point of order.
She would be the person to do the job. So I just wanted to end it on that I'm fully in support of her as the lead for it.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Nicole DeVoe.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
State your name and address, please.
Tonight, Nicole DeVoe, 215 Crescent Ave in Beachmont. Tonight, you're going to make a decision that will reverberate far beyond our city, and that symbolizes the path the city is going to take or willing to take in a struggling world, trying to reconcile its past and present and move forward with its future. And I hope you want to be remembered individually and as a group as willing to move forward. The Revere School Committee took a similar step last week by establishing the Equity Advisory Board. And while I was too young to remember the earlier version of Revere's HRC, I absolutely remember the need for it. As a student at the Beachmont School, I remember the prejudice in the name calling faced by Cambodian and Vietnamese immigrants during that time, kids already dealing with the traumas of war that many of us can't even imagine. It was a different time in our city, but the slurs and the prejudice all hailed from the same ignorance that we still see people slinging around today. We needed a Human Rights Commission then, and we need one now. The inequities unveiled by COVID-19 pandemic and again by the unrest that followed the murder of George Floyd only further proves this point. And while our community efforts have intersected before, I have not worked closely with Ms. Rana until the Revere COVID response effort began this past spring. I had a front row seat of her tireless work to make sure everybody in need got assistance. The ways in which she has shown her leadership as part of this wonderfully collaborative team are endless, and I learned a lot from that leadership that I will apply to any future efforts. Regarding any controversy surrounding the rallies in Revere, I was at both of those rallies. Most of those people were masked, and I heard what all the people had to say. I'd have to take exception to what you were saying about them telling they wanted all white people out of City Hall. That is not what happened. And whether or not you agree with what those speakers said or did at those rallies, or whether or not you want to do a deeper dive about where that anger comes from. What you cannot justifiably do is hold one person accountable for the words and actions of that entire group. It's also unfair and unjust to use that as an excuse to detract from Dimple's abilities to serve as the executive director of Reviere's HRC, a position she has certainly earned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Joseph Gravellisi.
Okay, now I've been unmuted. Okay, thank you. Joe Gravellisi, 37 Sweeney Ave, number 2 in Revere. I'm speaking in support of the appointment of Dimple Rana as director of the HRC and also as a disappointed resident. It was obvious to anyone who was paying attention last month that the delay of this appointment and not just having an up or down vote last month would lead to exactly what we have seen in our city over the past month, which is another month of vile invective on social media, another month of a city employee being at the receiving end of abuse, and another month of stories that made a lot of young people in our community wonder if there is a place for them in our city government at all. These appointment meetings routinely go by very quickly. Even for appointees, councilors admit they don't even know. I've never once heard any of you ask for more options for a zoning board of appeals appointee or for planning board or for police chief. I never once got a survey about any of those appointments, nor would I expect 300 comments about any of those appointments to represent the views of a city of 53,000 people. I heard one of you take the time to condemn the words Mayor Arrigo mentioned that have been launched at Dimple. Meanwhile, one councilor wants Dimple Rana to take responsibility for every word uttered by a person of color in the community. Another councilor was objecting to the fact that Dimple mentioned that she experienced racism while she was a student at the Wayland School, and that was one of the issues they had with her. Really? This is what makes you upset? Acknowledging a reality that is still very true for so many kids in our schools today?
Point of personal privilege.
If that's what makes you upset,
No.
you will never be
Point of
happy with
personal
any
privilege.
appointee to the
I'm not
HRC.
being besmirched
Please
by a
don't interrupt
speaker.
me, Councilman. Thank you.
Point of
So I'm
personal
glad to hear the
privilege.
council say that they support an
Point of
HRC.
personal privilege.
Thank you.
Point of personal
Councilor, I
privilege.
respectfully wish to complete my comments.
Point of personal privilege. This is actually,
Your point, you have to keep your point till later on.
okay.
No interrupt the speaker. Speaker, go ahead.
I'm very glad to hear that the council supports an HRC, and I take you at your word. However, it is fair to point out that at the last meeting, that was not the case. There were several that did have questions about it, so don't try to rewrite history. But that being said, if we're all people of goodwill, let's put our money where our mouth is. If you oppose this appointment, as is your right as councilors, but you have other suggestions on what steps you'd like to see Revere take instead of this one to work towards making this city more welcoming and inclusive, we'd love to hear them. But we haven't heard any such suggestion yet, and please don't try to claim that a motion condemning a hate crime or some sort of symbolic vote like that counts as doing something. That's the lowest of low-hanging fruit. So let's do the work. Let's take some real steps, whether it be around housing, around education, around employment. Because if we buckle under the pressure of a largely symbolic vote like this one, it's hard to see us digging in and doing the serious work ahead. The eyes of the region are on cities like us so that we can prove we can adapt to the increasing diversity of our community and make sure that our government reflects it. I applaud the mayor for trying to take this step, for putting himself on a limb because it's the right thing to do, and I hope that you'll all do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Abdul Al-Sulkum. I might have said that incorrectly. Is Abdullah?
Hello?
Lanre.
Yes, this is Lanre. I'm sure that the first name, many people there may not, understand it or know me by that name, but that's my official name, Abdullah. People call me by my middle name, Lanre Olusekun. And I thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Last month, I found that I wasn't one of the people that were called. I want to address this in three folds. The first, I want to address the council, and I want to thank Mayor Arrigo for having the audacity to actually do what is right by establishing Human Rights Commission. and try to put someone that is not only qualified, is a very hardworking city employee. That every one of you on this sitting have acknowledged that. And thirdly, I want to address her too. The city council last month, like Mr. I believe Ralph mentioned it, and I think Joe also mentioned it. This is not what we had last month. We were hearing all sorts of things about why the Human Rights Commission is not what we should be doing now. I hate to mention names, but I'm going to mention names. Judge, Councilor Rotundo.
Sir, please do not use names.
Oh, I'm sorry. But anyway, some councilors mentioned, some even went to the point of asking if what is the job description of what she wants to do. I think it's so demeaning. If the council chamber of Revere that everybody should rely to or go to are also acting this way when it comes to a matter of racial discrimination in the city, then we're in trouble. I'll be honest with you. I was in the meeting with the stakeholder meetings that Mayor Arrigo always arranged every time during COVID-19, which was organized by Dimple Rana. And I was one of the people that raised an issue of the racial discrimination that is going on in Revere, and we are not addressing it. I happened to go to Market Basket, and I was, for nothing, I was harassed by some white women. For nothing, doing nothing. I was actually holding the cart for them to pass, and they called me names. Also, luckily, for the goodness of what this country is and the goodness of what Revere planned to be, 2 white women came to my rescue. And there was a police officer in the Market Basket looking at the whole scenario. Didn't say a word. They told me, forget it, just walk away. Just walk away, don't say anything. And I kept saying, what did I do wrong? And I walked away. I walked to my car, and the police that was in the Market Basket now came to me and said, what is going on there? I said, what did you see? And he started trying to make it more difficult for me. And the women came back. They drove back. And they said, this gentleman didn't do anything wrong. I went home. I was so distraught. I told my kids what happened. I've been in Revere since 1983. I know all my kids were born and raised in this country, in this place. They went to Revere High School. And my daughter, one of my daughters, my oldest daughter, and my 3 daughters, they told me.
Sir, this is not anything to do with it.
I'm just.
Please summarize quickly, because I've already gone over 5 minutes that we said we'd do.
Okay, well, what I'm trying to say is that it is incumbent upon you, everybody in the council, to do the right thing. It is incumbent upon you. We are all looking, we are all watching what every one of you are doing. When it's time to vote, you come to us and you say all sorts of things. And when it's time to act on behalf of everybody, we hear that some people are not qualified, they are this. Dimple Rana is qualified. And I will tell Dimple, there's a saying that there are 3 stages for the truth. Once you will be ridiculed, and hold on, please. You'll be ridiculed, and there will be injustice, and finally, whatever you do will be held to be the truth. Your name will be written in gold in this city. I can bet that. And I want everybody to know that this woman is very qualified. What every one of you are talking about, and I know many of you, what you are talking about is about your personal decision. A lot of people don't like this woman. Some are call her Muslims, and I say, so what if she were a Muslim? Why this hatred so much, and why are we having it in the city hall? I'm one of the people that march in the front of the city hall, and I will demand that maybe I hope I'm the one that said that I did not say a white man or the white people in the city hall. I said I will want one day that one of the people of color will walk in this city hall and will be recognized. And that's what I said. I said that. Larry Olusegun said that. And I'm not ashamed of that.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This concludes the appointment subcommittee.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Now I'm going to ask for a roll call from the members of the subcommittee. Call by name. Councilor Janino.
No.
Councilor Janino says no. Councilor McKenna.
Before I vote, I would like to say that I did not take this vote lightly. No.
Councilor McKenna votes no. Councilor Powers.
No.
Councilor Powers votes no. Councilor Visconti.
No.
Councilor Visconti votes no. Ex officio, Council President Keefe.
No.
Council Keefe says no. And the chair, myself, no. I will ask the Committee of the Whole this evening to deny the application based on the recommendation from the Appointment Subcommittee. Thank you for all the effort and hard work that you have placed into this effort. You've been criticized, and unjustly so. It's the first time I hear from agencies outside that said we're criticizing the work that we're doing. I always hear words that they're not doing the work. Now we're doing the work, and people are criticizing. So I applaud you all for the courageousness of your efforts. Thank you. This concludes the appointment. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's one more appointment here to go. My dear friend Kathy Bowman, my dear friend. Next, before the City Council Subcommittee is 20-245, the appointment of Kathy Bowden as Treasurer Collector for the City of Revere. Is Kathy present?
I'm not on the committee, but I'm saying yes.
I am here.
State your name and address for the record, please.
It's Kathy Bowden, 55 Patriot Parkway, Revere, Mass.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say to the subcommittee, or just say hello, or whatever you'd like to say?
I'd like to say hello and thank you for considering me for the Treasurer and Collector position.
Thank you. And certainly, we're all aware of who you are because you've been serving in that capacity for several years now and not getting the recognition that you deserve. So I'm going to ask the members of the subcommittee if they have anything to say. If they don't have anything to say, we're going to ask members of the council. We'll go in order. Any council members of the...
Mr. Chairman,
any council...
Mr. Chairman, just one point of information is the fact that this is a new position to Kathy. She has not been serving in this position for multiple years. Just wanted to make that clear.
No, she hasn't, but she's up there working hard on a daily basis is what I'm saying. Thank you for the clarity, Mr. Mayor. Any members of the subcommittee wishing to speak? Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During my tenure as a city councilor, I have had the opportunity and the pleasure of voting for many different appointments to many different boards and commissions. However, this evening, I take great pride and great satisfaction in supporting a young lady who has gone over and above what was required in her work as an employee of the City of Revere. So well deserved. And for that reason, I will be supporting this young lady this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Powers. Any other councilors wishing to speak? Seeing any councilors and members wishing to speak? There's a motion from the, I would like to say from the chair that I've known Kathy Bowden for many, many years. She's done a great job. She's conscientious to her position. She worked feverishly under Judge Enzoni. She's deserving of this promotion. I recognize the mayor for making such a great selection because she's very, very qualified for that position. So I ask Chair, any members, all in favor, all opposed? I assume those are all yes, and we will vote this out favorably this evening before the Committee of the Whole unanimously. Thank you very much. Again, thanks everyone for participating in the Appointment Subcommittee. It was, and I appreciate your concerns. Thank you.